I want you to imagine something for a second. Like, really put yourself in this scene. You are 60 years old.
Okay, setting the stage.
Right. And you've lived this wild, violently dangerous, incredibly chaotic life.
Sounds exhausting, honestly.
Exactly. And you finally decide it's time to retire. But you don't, head to a quiet beach. You don't buy a farm.
No golf course for this guy.
Definitely no golf course. Instead, you climb a mountain. Mount Iwato, to be exact. You kneel before a statue of Buddha. You find a dark, solitary cave. And you decide that before you die, you are going to write down the ultimate secrets of winning.
Man, it is such a phenomenal, haunting image.
Right.
It feels like the cold open to a legendary cinematic epic, but it is actual documented history. You have this man whose entire life was defined by the blade, just sitting in complete isolation with a brush and ink.
And the gravity of that moment, that man in that cave, is the mission of our deep dive today. We are unpacking the Book of Five Rings.
Written in 1645.
Yeah, by the undefeated 17th century samurai, Musashi Miyamoto. But, and this is important, we aren't looking at this as just some dusty historical artifact.
No, not at all. Or a literal sword-fighting manual.
Right. The goal today is to translate this ancient text into actionable strategy and, well, philosophy for your everyday life. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get into the actual combat techniques, we have to look at the massive cultural footprint this book has today.
It's everywhere.
It really is. I was looking at the source data, specifically the list of books that modern readers download alongside Musashi's text. And the algorithm is pulling up an absolutely wild mix.
Yeah, it really spans centuries and genres in a way you wouldn't expect for, a martial arts manual.
Totally. I mean, you would expect to see Machiavelli's The Prince or Sun Tzu's The Art of War. That makes complete sense.
Sure, the classic strategy books.
But then the data shows people are also reading Einstein's theory of relativity alongside this. Yeah. They are reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, Plato's Republic, even H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu.
That is a bizarre lineup.
Right. I'm looking at that list trying to figure out what ties a 17th century samurai to cosmic horror and theoretical physics.
What's fascinating here is that this reading list perfectly frames what Musashi actually achieved in that cave.
How so?
Well, if you only look at the Book of Five Rings as a guide on how to swing a piece of sharpened steel, you are missing the point entirely. The people reading this text today are searching for foundational truths about reality.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they read Einstein to understand the physical universe, Nietzsche for the dark psychology of the human condition, Machiavelli for the cold mechanics of power. Musashi's work belongs in that exact same category.
So the sword is just a vehicle.
Exactly. He uses the sword as a metaphor to explain physics, psychology, and how to navigate the absolute chaos of existence.
Okay, so to even begin to understand how he navigates that chaos, we have to look at his foundation. In the text, he calls this the ground book.
The ground book, yeah.
And to build that ground, we need to understand his resume. Like, who is this guy, really?
His background is almost mythic, but it's very real. His first lethal duel took place when he was just 13 years old.
13. That is intense.
Right. Against a trained strategist named Arima Kihei, and from that moment on, he fought continuously. By the time Musashi was 29 years old, he had fought in 60 duels.
60.
And he remained completely undefeated. 60 life-or-death encounters against the greatest fighters in Japan, and he walked away from every single one.
Okay, I have to pause you there.
Yeah.
Because when I first read that, I had a very visceral negative reaction.
Really? Why?
Just sounds like the ultimate ego trip. Like, I won 60 times, I am the absolute best in the world, let me go to a cave and write a book about my own genius.
I get that. It absolutely sounds like arrogance on the surface, but when you actually read the text, the revelation he has is entirely different.
All right.
Yeah. When Musashi reached the age of 30, he took a step back and reflected on those 60 victories. And his conclusion wasn't, I am a strategic mastermind.
What was it?
His realization was incredibly humbling, almost to the point of a crisis. He looked back and realized those early victories were not due to true strategy at all.
Wait, so the greatest samurai of all time looked at his unbeaten record and thought, I was just winging it.
Precisely. He was totally winging it. He attributes his early survival to natural physical ability or maybe just sheer luck or, the fact that the opponents he faced had fundamentally flawed strategies.
That is mind-blowing.
He realizes he was surviving purely on animal instinct, not mastery. He actually writes that he didn't discover the true way of strategy until he was 50 years old.
That is wild. Think about that gap. 2 decades of intense
Mhm.
morning-to-night study after he had already won everything, just to figure out the underlying principles of why he won.
Right.
That is the ultimate cure for imposter syndrome for anyone listening.
It really shifts the entire narrative from arrogance to relentless curiosity. He wasn't satisfied with just winning. He needed to understand the mechanics of victory.
Right, the why and the how.
Exactly, and when he finally figures out this way, he explains it using a surprisingly grounded metaphor. He doesn't compare a military commander to a god or an emperor. He compares a master strategist to a foreman carpenter.
Oh, yeah, I found this section fascinating. He goes into deep detail about how a foreman has to know the natural rules of the environment and a lot work purely according to ability.
Yes.
And the way he describes the timber, the wood a carpenter uses, is so deliberate.
The specifics are what make it brilliant. A good foreman has beautiful, perfectly straight, unknotted timber.
The good stuff.
Right. And that gets used for the revealed pillars, the parts of the house everyone sees. Then you have straight timber with maybe a few small defects that goes to the inner pillars, providing hidden support.
But the crucial part, the part that stuck with me, is that he doesn't throw away the bad wood.
Not at all. He says good, strong timber that happens to be gnarled and knotted can be used discreetly in the construction. Its strength matters, but its appearance doesn't.
Exactly.
And even the weak, totally twisted wood has a purpose. It's used for scaffolding and eventually for firewood to heat the site.
Translating this to modern life, to me, this is the ultimate masterclass in project management.
Oh, absolutely.
Say you're running a team and you have that one employee who is brilliant, but maybe totally lacks social skills or gets easily frustrated.
They are the gnarled wood.
Yes. A bad manager fires them because they don't look good in front of clients. They aren't the beautiful, straight timber for the front porch.
Right, they don't fit the aesthetic.
But a master foreman puts them in a deeply technical, discrete role where their specific knotty strength is what actually holds the whole project up.
And that requires the leader to deeply understand the material they are working with, rather than forcing the material to be something it's fundamentally not.
You have to be totally resourceful.
Yeah, you do. This philosophy of using every available asset leads directly into Musashi's core school of thought, the Niten-ichi Ryu.
Which translates to two have in one school, right?
Yes. It's his famous method of using both the longsword and the companion short sword simultaneously.
Which was highly controversial at the time. The tradition was a two-handed grip on one longsword.
Oh, it was almost scandalous to traditionalists. But Musashi argues that it is a fundamental sin to die with a weapon undrawn.
Wow.
If you have tools at your disposal, you must train your body and mind to use them all, especially when fighting against a crowd or in a confined space. Why limit yourself to look traditional when survival is on the line?
Don't leave anything on the table. Use every tool in your belt. Okay, so that establishes the foundation, the ground book. But obviously a foundation doesn't win a fight on its own.
No, it just gives you a place to stand.
Right, you have to move. And that brings us to his next section, the water book. Musashi pivots from the macro organization of carpentry to your personal internal mindset. He says the practitioner's spirit must become like water.
Because water is the ultimate adaptable element.
Yeah.
Musashi writes that water seamlessly takes the shape of its receptacle. It can be a tiny, quiet trickle in a stream, or it can be a terrifying, violent sea. The human spirit must cultivate that exact same fluidity.
And he gets incredibly specific about the physical stance required to maintain this fluid spirit. It's not just a vague vibe, it's heavily physiological.
Oh, he breaks it down muscle by muscle.
He really does. He writes that your head should be erect, your forehead completely unwrinkled. You should have slightly narrowed eyes, a straight nose, and I couldn't get over this detail, a feeling of slightly flaring your nostrils.
Yeah, it's very vivid. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Musashi isn't just giving posture tips. He is outlining a state of absolute calm predatory readiness. Every muscle is tuned.
Right.
But the way he talks about the eyes is where the real genius lies. He breaks the gaze down into two distinct elements, perception and sight. He writes that perception is strong, but sight is weak.
Here's where I need you to translate for me. Because he says you need to see distant things as if they were close, and take a distance view of close things. honestly, how is that physically possible?
It's tough to wrap your head around at first.
Yeah, like if someone is swinging a 3-foot razor blade an inch from my face, I can't just pretend they are 50 yards away. My eyes are going to focus on the blade.
It sounds like a physical paradox, but he is talking about psychological detachment.
Okay.
Think of sight as your literal biological eyeballs getting hijacked by a threat. If you focus solely on that shiny blade right in front of you, the immediate terrifying detail, you lose the larger context, you get tunnel vision, you freeze.
That makes sense.
Perception, on the other hand, is the mind's eye. It is broad situational awareness. Viewing a close thing from a distance means refusing to get psychologically swallowed by the immediate crisis.
So you're stepping back mentally.
Exactly. It means seeing the entire battlefield, noticing the enemy's footing, sensing their rhythm, even while they are right on top of you.
Okay, I think I'm grasping this. Like if I'm in a terrible heated negotiation or even an argument with a partner,
Good example.
sight is reacting to the fact that they just raise their voice and slam their hand on the table. My adrenaline spikes, I want to yell back.
Right, you get sucked into the emotion.
But perception is stepping back in my own mind while they are yelling and recognizing why they are doing it, noticing that they are actually insecure about the deal or that they are trying to distract me from a weak point in their contract.
That is a perfect modern application. You are not getting tangled in the adrenaline of the slammed hand. You are perceiving the whole board. And that fluidity applies to how you defend yourself physically or verbally.
How so?
Well, Musashi introduces a concept called attitude, no attitude. There are traditional fixed stances in sword fighting. Upper, middle, lower, right, left.
The classic moves.
Right. But Musashi insists that these stances only exist for one singular reason: to cut the enemy.
So you shouldn't just strike a pose because page 42 of the manual says so.
Exactly. Defensive fixedness, holding a rigid stance just because it's traditional, is what he calls a dead hand. True pliability, constantly adapting your stance to whatever the immediate chaotic environment demands to achieve your goal, is a living hand.
A living hand. I love that. So we have the solid ground, we have the fluid, adaptable water. But how does being like water actually hold up when someone is actively trying to destroy you?
Yeah, that's the real test.
Right. How does theory survive the absolute chaos of conflict? That brings us to segment 3, the fire book.
This is where theory crashes into reality. The Fire Book is entirely about the heat of conflict and psychological warfare, because fighting or any kind of intense competition does not happen in a vacuum.
No, it's messy.
Musashi's utterly obsessed with controlling the environment. He says you should always position yourself with the sun behind you, or at least on your right side.
Use the glare.
Yes. You want to deliberately chase the enemy into bad footholds, force them over thresholds, push them against pillars so they literally cannot look around to assess the situation.
He wants you to blind them and trap them.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. How often do we let our opponents, whether that's a business competitor, a difficult client, or just a challenging life situation, dictate the terrain?
We probably do it all the time without realizing it.
Musashi is demanding that you take control of the environment before the fight even starts. If the sun is going to be in someone's eyes, you make damn sure it's theirs, not yours. You set the meeting time. You choose the venue.
And he doesn't just manipulate the physical terrain, he manipulates the mind. He has a technique called to become the enemy.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
He says that when you are fighting, you might feel completely overwhelmed, but you have to realize the enemy feels just as trapped as you do. He uses this incredible analogy of a robber trapped inside a house.
It's a brilliant reframing. To the people standing outside the house, the robber seems fortified, dangerous, and in control.
Like a boss battle.
Right. But if you mentally become the robber, you realize he is actually terrified, cornered, and desperate for a way out.
It's weaponized empathy.
It really is.
By realizing your opponent is dealing with the exact same fear, friction, and doubt that you are, they lose their mythological power over you. And once you see that weakness, he pairs it with another concept called crossing at a ford.
This draws on a sailor's intuition. Crossing at a ford is about knowing exactly when the conditions are right, when the tide is low, when the wind is at your back, to push through a weak point and make your crossing.
So it's about timing.
Exactly. You don't just attack blindly, you wait for the environment and the enemy's state of mind to align.
And when they finally stumble, he says you do not let up. He calls this to no collapse. Musashi says everything collapses eventually. Even sturdy houses collapse.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Right. And when an enemy's rhythm becomes deranged, you have to pursue them in that exact microsecond so they cannot recover.
The mechanics of this are crucial. How do you spot a deranged rhythm? In combat, it might be a stumbled step or a heavy breath.
What about outside of combat?
In a modern context, like a debate or a boardroom, it's noticing when someone repeats themselves, when their voice gets slightly thinner, or when they resort to a personal attack. That shows their internal rhythm is collapsing.
They're cracking.
Yes. And Musashi says, you cannot hesitate. You don't give them a moment to catch their breath and reset. You execute the solution entirely.
You don't leave it half finished.
Mm-hmm.
But my absolute favorite psychological tactic in this section has to be the one with the most bizarre name.
I know exactly which one you're going to say.
He calls it rat's head, ox's neck.
It is a striking, almost confusing image at first glance.
It's incredibly weird,
Mhm.
but the meaning behind it is brilliant. Musashi says that when you are fighting, you and your opponent can get entirely tangled up in the granular, petty, microscopic details of the fight.
Right, the little parries and blocks.
The back and forth parrying, that's the rat's head. When that happens, you must suddenly change your spirit and adopt a massive, broad perspective. It's the ox's neck. I was thinking about this, and the best way I can visualize it is zooming in and out on a digital map on your phone.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to translate it. Let's expand on that.
Think about when you're pinching the screen, zoomed all the way in on one tiny intersection. You're completely lost in this one tiny neighborhood. That's the rat's head.
You can't see anything else around it?
Exactly. You're arguing over some tiny detail in a spreadsheet or a single word in an email, going back and forth, burning all your energy. And suddenly, you remember to reverse the pinch. You zoom all the way out to view the entire continent.
The ox's neck.
The ox's neck.
Yeah.
You completely reset the scale of the conflict.
And by resetting that scale, you realize the street you were fighting over doesn't even connect to the main highway.
Exactly.
You realize the argument you are having doesn't actually matter to the bottom line of the project. By stepping out of that petty entanglement, you break the opponent's rhythm and instantly regain the strategic high ground.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because once you adopt that massive zoomed-out perspective, you start to see through everyone else's illusions. Which brings us to his final writings, the Wind Book and the Book of the Void.
Right, the final steps of mastery.
Having explained his own methods, Musashi uses the Wind Book to relentlessly critique the hacks and shortcuts being sold by other martial arts schools.
He essentially goes after the grifters and fake gurus of the 17th century.
He really does. He heavily critiques schools that rely on equipment hacks, particularly the use of extra-long swords. These other schools had a marketing slogan, 1 inch gives the hand advantage.
Catchy.
Yeah, they sold the idea that if your sword is just a little bit longer, you can win safely from a distance. Musashi openly mocks this. He says this is the doctrine of someone with a fundamentally weak spirit.
Because if you rely on the length of your tool rather than the intent to actually close the distance and face the danger, you have already lost psychologically.
You're trying to cheat the system.
Exactly. You are hoping the tool does the work that your spirit is too afraid to do.
He hates reliance on flashy gear. But he also critiques something else in this section that gave me serious pause.
What's that?
He critiques speed. I really struggled with this.
Yeah, that's a tough one to grasp.
Shouldn't a master swordsman be incredibly fast? I mean, in sports and business, we always hear speed kills. If you're faster than the other guy, you win. How could speed be bad?
It is highly counterintuitive for a modern listener, but Musashi counters that idea beautifully. He says speed is actually a negative indicator because it implies that things are out of rhythm.
Okay.
When you watch someone who is truly a master of their craft, they do not look fast. They look incredibly natural.
I'm trying to picture that. Like a musician.
Exactly like a musician. A master pianist reading a complex score doesn't look like they are frantically rushing to hit the keys. They are perfectly in the pocket.
Right.
Accomplished ballet dancers don't seem busy or rushed. Think of a marathon. Unpracticed runners look frantic. Their arms are flailing. Their breathing is heavy and rapid.
Like they're working so hard.
Yes, but a master marathon runner, they look tranquil, they are moving much faster, but they look like they are gliding.
So the old military saying applies here. Smooth is fast.
Precisely. When you try to be fast, you chop. You make mistakes. You overextend. When you are in perfect rhythm, you achieve the goal with zero wasted movement.
That makes total sense. And that ties into his critique of interior versus surface teaching.
Yes, his thoughts on education.
He despises these rival schools that sell basic surface techniques to beginners,
Yeah.
but keep the secret interior traditions hidden behind a paywall for advanced paying students.
The 17th century premium subscription.
Right. He says there are no secrets. The truth of the universe isn't a premium subscription. You teach the fundamental truth directly, scaling it based on the student's ability.
Which is such a refreshing take.
It is, which finally leads us to the summit of the mountain, the Book of the Void.
This is the shortest section in the entire text, but it is undeniably the philosophical peak of his life's work.
It is the ultimate realization. Musashi writes this deeply cryptic line. By knowing things that exist, you can know that which does not exist.
It's beautiful.
It is. But I'm going to be honest, when I read that, it sounded like a riddle on a tea bag.
Fair enough.
What is the void, practically speaking? It's
Right.
not just an empty black hole in your mind, right?
No, it's not a magical trance, and it's not turning your brain off. To put it in modern terms, the void is the ultimate state of muscle memory and absolute presence.
Okay.
Think of things that exist as the rules, the stances, the tactics, the grip on the sword. You study those endlessly for decades, as Musashi did, but eventually you study them so deeply that you no longer have to think about them.
Well, like driving a car.
Exactly like driving a car. When you first learn, you are hyper-aware of the pedals, the mirrors, the steering wheel. It's stressful.
Yeah, you're gripping the wheel.
But after 10 years, you can drive home and not even remember the trip. You have entered a kind of void. Or think of a master jazz musician.
They just flow.
They know all the scales, all the music theory, the things that exist. But when they are on stage improvising a solo, they aren't thinking about the sheet music. They are completely empty of conscious thought, just reacting perfectly to the moment.
That state of unclouded, immediate action, that is the void.
That is the void.
When you have stripped away the reliance on cheap tricks, the frantic need for speed, the rigid dead hands of fixed attitudes, what is left is that pure, spontaneous clarity.
Beautifully put.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've traveled from the grounded, pragmatic foundation of the carpenter to the adaptable fluidity of water.
Quite a journey.
We've navigated the chaotic fire of conflict and zoomed out to see through the wind of false gimmicks, finally arriving at the void. The true value of this deep dive isn't about literally learning to dual-wield katanas in your next board meeting.
Probably not advised.
Definitely not. It's about Musashi's profound realization that true mastery takes constant, lifelong training. As he puts it, you must step by step walk the 1,000-mile road. It's about fluid adaptability, observing with perception rather than just panic-stricken sight, and understanding your internal rhythm rather than relying on frantic speed or flashy tools.
And if we can leave you with one final thought to mull over, it's regarding this concept of the void applied to the reality we live in today.
Where does it fit?
Well, Musashi frequently warned against what he called the clouds of bewilderment.
Ah, I love that phrase.
In our current age of endless information overload, non-stop smartphone notifications, 24-hour news cycles, and constantly reacting to the immediate swing of the sword right in front of our faces, perhaps true strategy today isn't about acquiring more data.
Interesting.
It's not about finding a new productivity hack. It's about cultivating your own personal void.
A sanctuary from the noise.
Exactly. Finding a state of completely unclouded, calm nothingness and deliberately returning to that baseline rhythm before making your most critical decisions.
It really makes you rethink everything about how we operate daily. So before you make your next big move, before you send that angry email or pivot your career, maybe take a breath, ignore the noise. And imagine yourself stepping into that quiet mountain cave.